I'm not sure I can agree to these terms. It feels rushed.
This isn't a negotiation. It's a requirement for the merger to proceed as planned.
Stood at his apartment window, watching lightning crack across the sky, wondering how he'd tell his 8-year-old daughter they might not make rent again this month. Little did he know, the drenched figure huddled at the bus stop below would change their lives forever. If you've ever believed in fate or second chances, this story might just restore your faith in humanity. Stay with me until the end, I promise it'll be worth it. If this story touches your heart, please consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel for more incredible true stories that remind us of the unexpected ways lives can intertwine. James pulled his worn flannel robe tighter around his thin frame. At 42, he looked a decade older. Life had carved deep lines around his eyes and sprinkled premature gray throughout his dark hair. 6 years as a single father had aged him, but he never complained. Not when his wife died of cancer, leaving him alone with their 2-year-old daughter, Lily. Not when he lost his accounting job during company downsizing. Not even when he had to take 2 minimum wage positions just to keep a roof over their heads. "Daddy?" Lily's small voice came from behind him. She stood in her faded unicorn pajamas, clutching the stuffed rabbit her mother had given her. "I can't sleep with the thunder." James smiled, the kind of smile that hid pain behind love. "Come here, sweetheart." He lifted her onto his hip, though she was getting almost too big for that now. Together, they watched the storm rage. "Someone's down there," Lily pointed to the bus shelter across the street. "They look cold." James squinted through the rain-streaked glass. Sure enough, a figure sat hunched on the bench, head bowed against the elements. The last bus had gone hours ago. He knew the schedule by heart from the months he'd relied on public transportation before he could afford his beat-up Honda. "They'll be okay," he said, though uncertainty tinged his voice. "The next bus comes at," he checked the clock on the wall. 11:42 p.m. "Actually, there won't be another bus until morning." Lily looked up at him with her mother's eyes, deep brown and impossibly kind. "We should help them, Daddy. Remember what you always say?" James sighed. His late wife's voice echoed in his head alongside his daughter's. "Kindness costs nothing, but its value is beyond measure." It was their family motto, one he tried to live by even when kindness seemed like a luxury they could scarcely afford. "Stay here," he told Lily, setting her down. "Lock the door behind me. I'll be right back." The rain soaked him instantly as he jogged across the street, his threadbare sneakers splashing through puddles. As he approached the shelter, he realized the figure was a young woman, perhaps in her early 20s. She wore expensive-looking clothes that were now thoroughly drenched, and she clutched a small backpack to her chest. "Excuse me," James called over the downpour. "Are you okay? The next bus isn't until 6 a.m. The woman looked up, startled. Her face was tear-streaked, though in the rain it was hard to tell. She had striking features, high cheekbones, clear blue eyes, and dark hair plastered to her head. I didn't realize," she stammered, her voice carrying a slight accent he couldn't place. "I just needed somewhere to sit and think." "In this weather?" James frowned. Something wasn't right. Her clothes, despite being soaked, were clearly high-end. A small diamond stud glinted in her ear. Yet here she was, alone at a bus stop in one of the city's poorest neighborhoods, well after midnight. "I don't have anywhere else to go," she said simply. James hesitated. Every instinct told him to be cautious. He had Lily to think about. But the young woman looked genuinely distressed, and the storm was only worsening. "Look," he said finally, "I live just across the street with my daughter. Our place isn't much, but you can dry off and stay until morning if you need to. I can sleep on the couch." The woman studied him, wariness evident in her posture. "Why would you help a stranger?" James shrugged, rain dripping from his hair. "Because someone should. I'm James, by the way." After a moment's hesitation, she stood. Elise, she replied, though something in her tone suggested it might not be her real name. Back in the apartment, Lily was waiting anxiously by the door. Her eyes widened at the sight of their soaked visitor. "Lily, this is Elise. She's going to stay with us tonight because of the storm," James explained, grabbing their cleanest towels from the linen closet. "Hello," Lily said shyly, before adding with the directness only children possess, "Your shoes are very pretty, even though they're all wet." Elise looked down at her designer boots and smiled, the first genuine expression James had seen from her. "Thank you. I like your rabbit." James showed Elise to the bathroom, gave her some of his ex-wife's clothes that he'd never been able to part with, and prepared the couch for himself. Their apartment was small, just 2 bedrooms, a tiny kitchen, and a living area with furniture that had seen better days. The walls needed paint, and the carpet was worn thin in places, but it was clean and warm. "I'm sorry it's not much," James said as he set a mug of hot tea on the coffee table for her. Elise emerged from the bathroom in the borrowed clothes, her wet hair combed back. "It's perfect," she said quietly, looking around with an expression James couldn't quite read. "Thank you." After Lily was tucked back into bed, James and Elise sat in the living room, the storm still raging outside. An awkward silence stretched between them until James finally spoke. "So, do you want to talk about why you were really at that bus stop?" Elise stared into her tea. "Not particularly." "Fair enough," James nodded. "We all have our stories. But if you're in some kind of trouble—" "I'm not," she said quickly. "Not the kind you're thinking, anyway." She sighed, her shoulders slumping. "I just needed to disappear for a while." James didn't push. He understood the need to escape, even if just for a night. Instead, he told her about Lily, about teaching 3rd grade before budget cuts forced him into retail and night security work, about his dreams of going back to school someday. Elise listened intently, asking thoughtful questions. As the night wore on, she gradually revealed small details about herself. She loved art, spoke 3 languages, and had traveled extensively. But she carefully avoided mentioning family or why she was alone in the rain. By the time they both retired, Elise to James's room and James to the lumpy couch, something had shifted. A tentative trust had formed, born of shared humanity in the middle of a storm. Morning arrived with clear skies and sunlight streaming through the windows. James woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of laughter. Following the noise to the kitchen, he found Elise and Lily making pancakes together, flour dusting both their faces. "Daddy! Elise is teaching me how to flip them in the air," Lily exclaimed, her eyes bright with excitement. "I hope you don't mind," Elise said, suddenly uncertain. "I found ingredients and thought I'd make breakfast as a thank you." "Mind? This is the best wake-up call I've had in years," James smiled, accepting a mug of coffee that tasted far better than the instant brand he usually bought. They ate together at the small kitchen table, Lily chattering about school and her upcoming science project. For a brief moment, it felt like they were a normal family without the weight of financial stress and loneliness that had become James's constant companions. After breakfast, Elise insisted on washing the dishes. "I should get going soon," she said, though she made no move toward the door. "Where will you go?" James asked, helping dry the plates. Elise's expression clouded. "Back to reality, I suppose." Before she could elaborate, a sharp knock came at the door. James frowned. They rarely had visitors, especially on a Saturday morning. When he opened it, he found 2 stern-looking men in dark suits standing in the hallway. "Can I help you?" James asked, immediately on guard. "We're looking for Alexandra Devereaux," one of the men said, his tone professional but urgent. "We have reason to believe she might be here." James was about to deny knowing anyone by that name when Elise appeared behind him. "It's okay, James," she said softly. "That's me. My real name is Alexandra." The men visibly relaxed. Miss Devereaux, your father has been extremely concerned. The entire security team has been searching all night. James turned to her, confusion evident on his face. What's going on? Alexandra, not Elise, sighed deeply. James, I haven't been entirely honest with you. My father is Richard Devereaux. The name hit James like a physical blow. Everyone knew Richard Devereaux, the real estate magnate whose company owned half the city, including the building where James worked his night security job. His net worth was estimated in the billions. You're a Devereaux, he managed, trying to reconcile the humble, kind woman who'd made pancakes with his daughter with the heiress to one of the country's largest fortunes. I am, she confirmed, a hint of defiance in her voice. And I ran away last night because I was tired of living in a bubble where everyone wants something from me. I just needed one night of being nobody special. The security men waited patiently by the door while Alexandra gathered her things. Lily, sensing the tension, hugged her stuffed rabbit tightly. Are you leaving, Elise? She asked in a small voice. Alexandra knelt down to Lily's level. I am, sweetheart. But thank you for sharing your home with me. It meant more than you know. As she stood to leave, she pressed something into James's hand, a business card with her personal number scrawled on the back. Thank you for your kindness, she said simply. It cost you nothing, but to me, it was everything. And then she was gone, whisked away in a black luxury car that seemed jarringly out of place in their neighborhood. James stood at the window with Lily, watching as the vehicle disappeared around the corner, taking with it the strange connection that had formed in the span of a single stormy night. Will we ever see her again, Daddy? Lily asked. James looked down at the card in his hand. I don't know, sweetheart. Life returned to its normal rhythm. James continued working his 2 jobs, Lily went to school, and the struggle to make ends meet remained constant. The night with Alexandra began to feel like a dream, something too fantastical to have actually happened. 3 weeks later, James was called into his manager's office at the department store where he worked days. His heart sank, budget cuts had been rumored, and he couldn't afford to lose this job. Wilson, his manager began, unusually solemn, I received a call from corporate today. James braced himself for the worst. They've created a new position, head of community outreach and education programs. Full benefits, significant salary increase. And they want you for it. James stared, certain he'd misheard. Me? Why? His manager shrugged. Apparently, someone very high up recommended you personally. Said you embodied the values the company wants to promote. That evening, a letter arrived at their apartment. Inside was an acceptance letter to the local university's education program, with a note stating his tuition had been covered by a private scholarship fund. The letter was unsigned, but James knew. 2 days later, as James was helping Lily with homework, a knock came at their door. This time, it was Alexandra herself, dressed casually in jeans and a simple blouse, though the watch on her wrist probably cost more than his car. Hi, she said, suddenly shy. I hope it's okay that I came by. Lily squealed with delight, running to hug her. James stood frozen, 1,000 questions racing through his mind. Was it you? He finally asked. The job? The scholarship? Alexandra nodded. My father owns the parent company of your store. And I serve on the board of the education foundation that provided the scholarship. She hesitated. Are you angry? James considered the question seriously. I've never taken handouts, he said slowly. I've always wanted to earn everything I have. It's not a handout, Alexandra insisted. It's an investment. In someone who deserves a chance. She stepped closer. That night, you showed me kindness when you had every reason not to. You opened your home to a stranger because it was the right thing to do, even when you had so little to give. She glanced around the apartment, seeing not its shabbiness but the evidence of love that filled it, Lily's artwork on the refrigerator, the bookshelf overflowing with library books, the worn photo albums carefully arranged on a side table. My father built his empire on the belief that everyone has a price, she continued. That night showed me some things are priceless. Your kindness changed something in me, James. I've spent the last 3 weeks convincing my father to establish a foundation for single parents pursuing education, with you as our first recipient. James felt overwhelmed. I don't know what to say. Say you'll accept, Alexandra smiled. And maybe say you'll have dinner with me sometime? Just as friends, she added quickly, a blush coloring her cheeks. Lily tugged on James's hand. Say yes, Daddy. Elise makes the best pancakes. James laughed, the sound rusty but genuine. Well, I can't argue with that logic. Over the following months, James's life transformed. He reduced his work hours to attend classes, excelling in his education courses. The new position allowed him to create programs that helped other struggling families in the community. For the first time since losing his wife, he felt hope taking root again. Alexandra became a regular visitor, her friendship with both James and Lily deepening with each passing week. She taught Lily about art and languages, while James showed her the simple joys she'd missed growing up in privilege, flying kites in the park, making s'mores over a camping stove, watching fireflies on summer evenings. Richard Devereaux initially disapproved of his daughter's new friends, but even he was eventually won over by Lily's unfiltered charm and James's integrity. The foundation Alexandra had created flourished, helping dozens of single parents return to school. 1 year after that stormy night, James and Lily moved into a modest but comfortable house with a small backyard, purchased with his own savings from his new position. On moving day, Alexandra arrived with housewarming gifts and news of her own. I'm starting my own art therapy center for children, she announced proudly. No more working for my father's company. This is all mine. That's wonderful, James said, genuinely happy for her. Their friendship had carefully avoided crossing certain lines, though the attraction between them had grown increasingly difficult to ignore. As they sat on the porch that evening, watching Lily chase fireflies in the yard, Alexandra turned to him. Do you ever think about how different our lives would be if it hadn't rained that night? She asked. If you hadn't looked out your window at exactly the right moment? James considered this. I believe some people come into our lives for a reason. Maybe it wasn't chance at all. My father would call that sentimental nonsense, Alexandra smiled. And what would you call it? She looked at him, the last light of day illuminating her face. I'd call it the best kind of fortune. The kind money can't buy. James reached for her hand, and she intertwined her fingers with his. They sat in comfortable silence, watching Lily dance in the gathering dusk, the future stretching before them like an unwritten story, one where kindness had indeed proven to be the most valuable currency of all. 2 years later, on the anniversary of that stormy night, James proposed in the rain at the same bus stop where they'd first met. Alexandra said yes before he could even finish asking. Lily, now 11, had helped plan the whole thing, right down to the umbrella decorated with fairy lights. Their wedding was small and intimate, held in the community garden that James had helped establish through his outreach program. Richard Devereaux walked his daughter down the aisle, having finally recognized that his daughter's happiness was worth more than any business merger or social connection. In his vows, James spoke words that resonated with everyone present. You came to my door as a stranger seeking shelter from a storm, but you became the shelter I didn't know I needed. You taught me that sometimes, the greatest gifts arrive in unexpected packages, and that opening your heart, even when you're afraid, can lead to the most extraordinary journey.